Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3819. Today's date is wait, okay, 15th of January 2026. It's been almost like a morning at 10:21 a.m. Okay, yeah. All right. Today it's been a little bit late. Okay, yeah. Whatever. Let's just jump into the question. Okay, instead of kind of like a talking about some sort of shits. Are you hearing me very much properly or not? Like I think that it's a kind of a construction is actually happening over there, so there is some sort of kind of like a noise that actually came. It's not really that key, you don't really listen. It's a yeah. I would act kind of like something listen, but the mobile phone is kind of like a bit more understanding regarding about the scenario. It actually capture the kind of like whatever the sound, it kind of like a nearby, not kind of like a sounded which is kind of like a far away from there. Whatever. Okay, the question is, what if the parallel live cross the path? Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always been really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force me to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or when I try to create that reality inside of my mind, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge and information and experience that I've been through, and somehow it kind of like a felt good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's a raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Now regarding about the question says that what if a parallel lives cross a path? Is it like, let me read it again. It kind of like a somebody say this thing that ki, what if parallel live cross a path? Now what exactly is this thing? What is exactly parallel live and things like that? It's a kind of like a scientific. It's not a scientific. It's a frictional plus scientific. It's a okay. What exactly is this thing? What is exactly parallel life? Okay, yeah. So in scientific point of perspective, parallel life or parallel universe is not exist, or maybe it's not proven at the moment. Okay, yeah. In the future it will be. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, but roughly this parallel universe is kind of like a lies on friction. Okay, it does not rely on kind of like a scientific point of perspective. Now, what is actually the parallel life or parallel universe? A parallel universe is that key. Some kind of like a like I kind of like a something watch some sort of movies and things, and that I'm kind of like a telling from point of perspective. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, so let's just say that key. Okay, so example, imagine that key after I done my graduation, I choose engineering college. Okay, yeah. uh, but I want to choose medical college. Okay, yeah. But I chose engineering college. Okay, so my path is kind of like a went to engineering college. Like this is the engineering college life and things and that. But because of that, there is a some part of me I wanted to be medical, but I didn't really choose medical. But there is some part of that ki choose medical, like some part that like basically is this thing na, in this particular event that you choose what kind of like a career that you want. Okay, yeah, you choose engineering. Okay, yeah, but you want to choose a kind of like a medical and things like that, but because of the family pressure and things you don't really choose the medical. Okay, yeah. So in this particular point, the universe actually split in two different parts. Okay, one part went to the engineering college, another part went into the medical college. Okay, yeah. So there is a kind of like a two different timeline is actually created from this event. Okay, yeah. Some people says that thing that ki like the both universe is actually created. Like this is a kind of like a only one branch. Like it's a kind of like a one thing. It kind of like creates a branch. Okay, yeah, and that is called one timeline. That is another timeline. Okay, so there is a both timeline. There is a both timeline. Okay, there is a both timeline, which is actually kind of like a going like a basically in normal speed and things and that and that. Okay, yeah. So this is called parallel life or parallel universe. Okay, do you understand? It's a friction, by the way. I am not really sure. It's a completely friction. Okay, yeah. So, yeah, example. The question is that what if those parallel life are actually crossing a path? A parallel life are actually crossing a path. Now, is it actually happen? A kind of like a simply the parallel life does kind of like a cross the path or things like that. It's a kind of like a simply the, let's just imagine a two train A, train B. Train A, train B kind of like a going a normal speed and things like that. But there is a kind of like a intervention or diversion actually came and they kind of like a cross the path or things like that. Or something like that. Okay, yeah. So does it actually happen in parallel universe? Well, I'm not really sure. But it's a complete friction. Still, okay, yeah. Like basically when I try to imagine a friction, then I went like a friction level. Then it just doesn't really have any kind of like constraint and things like that. Then I would kind of like a think this happened and this happened and this happened, this happened. So there is a kind of like a very less realities actually exist in this particular scenario. So it's a very kind of like a hard to explain regarding about that particular stuff because it's not okay, yeah. It's just kind of like a things that I just sometimes I just wanted to talk about this particular stuff, but it doesn't make any sense. Why? Is because it's a friction and things like that. So that is whatever. So imagine a scenario that a kind of like a two parallel life, one parallel life and two parallel life are actually crossing each other and things like that. Take a scenario. Okay, same example is this thing that ki, let's just say that the medical person who kind of like did the medical college, okay, yeah, complete the medical graduation and things like that. Now that particular person became a doctor, and this particular person is kind of like a became an engineer because he kind of like a choose engineer and he became the engineer, things like that. Okay, yeah. Now is something that ki like basically what exactly happened in their life is that he suddenly is this thing that ki that ki kind of like a somebody they both are kind of like a somebody dating a girl. Okay, yeah. Now this is kind of like a very weird thing actually happened. Okay, let's just say this is the girl. Okay, yeah. Now in this particular timeline, in this medical term, okay, that particular person choose the medical person. Okay, yeah, he kind of like a attracted toward this girl. Okay, yeah, and somehow it kind of like a felt like that. Ki I knew this girl. I'm not really sure, but I knew this girl, and why is that? Is because of that. Ki I don't know. It's kind of like some sort of instinct and things like that. Okay, yeah. It felt like that. Ki I knew this girl. It felt like that. Ki I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing. It just like you actually seen that particular girl first time in a life. Okay, yeah. But you are in your mind. It's somehow kind of like it tells that ki I seen that girl somewhere. I don't know, but it's that. Okay, yeah. It is that. So this is what kind of like that you gonna feel. Okay, yeah. Why is that? Is because of that the another version of yourself is the engineering version of yourself who has a girl who already met the girl in his college life, and this is the exact girl but in his timeline. Okay, in the engineering timeline. So basically is this thing his version of is the engineering version in the engineering timeline. That girl was actually from this timeline. Okay, yeah, and she was actually kind of like a girlfriend of him. Okay, yeah, and they kind of like spend almost like a kind of like a something 2-3 year of kind of like a relationship and things like that, and basically they didn't really work out and thing and they broke up. Okay, yeah, they broke up. But in the medical, he never really got in relationship, nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. After he graduation, he kind of like a met a girl which is kind of like a somebody from his timeline, like a medical timeline. Okay, yeah, but exactly look like this woman. Okay, yeah. And when he saw this particular girl, he kind of like felt like that. I seen that particular girl. I'm not really sure, but I seen that particular girl. Okay, and this is a very crazy thing happened. Okay, this is very crazy thing happened. But because I didn't really knew her, but it kind of like felt that I knew her. It just kind of like a things. This particular situation called cross the path means like that the both the timeline are actually going. They didn't really interact with each other, nothing really at all. But there is some sort of moment actually came where they're kind of like somebody sharing some sort of information, but without knowing, or kind of like somebody out of the world and things like that. Okay, yeah. And this is what kind of like somebody create confusion and kind of like some problem and things like that. Now it's a very simple example that I told you regarding about a kind of like a particular girl, which kind of like a something that you would sense that I knew that particular girl, but in reality you were kind of like a seeing her first time. Okay, yeah. But another timeline version, that particular girl was your girlfriend and things like that. So it's kind of like a, somebody create a lot of confusion and things and that, and then you kind of like a, somebody say this thing, hey, says hi, uh, um, do I know you? And that girl, like basically, I'm actually talking about the kind of like a medical life. Okay, yeah. So medical guy who actually kind of like somebody talked to that particular girl. So basically, that girl was kind of like so the conversation actually happened over there. So basically, the guy says hi, and that girl says hi. Do I know you? And she says, no, I don't. Okay, yeah. Probably is this thing. The conversation actually happened and things and that probably. So when this thing actually happened, then that particular kind of like a somebody guy, the medical guy, who kind of like a somebody is this thing that he confused, and but he liked that particular girl. Okay, yeah. Why is that? Because he already familiar with her, is because of very unknown reason. Okay, because of that he might be the kind of like a previous version of his life might be kind of like a known and things and that something like that. Okay, yeah. So basically he likes that particular girl. He tried to talk with that particular girl. That girl is became his girlfriend and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now if I try to imagine a scenario and things like that, then probably just I don't know, yeah, dude. It just like if I'm trying to thinking about that possible point of perspective, then it kind of like a went through like a friction. Okay, it just yeah, like basically my head is actually exploding regarding about this story and kind of like imagine that, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. It's just like I should have always tell this thing, because let me tell you, it's a kind of like a very frictionalized version of the kind of like a things, and it just doesn't make any sense at all. So that's why just should I continue this story? It just no, it's not like it's not thing. Okay, yeah, but is it actually happened in real life? Um, like I don't know. I think that I don't know. Okay, let's just understand from my point of perspective. Okay, yeah, that key. Like basically is this thing. Let's take a kind of like a scenario. Okay, yeah, I already mentioned this thing multiple times, but still I'm kind of like a talk about again that key in a 12th standard. Okay, yeah, in 2011 I get 109 marks in PCM group. What's the PCM group? Physics, chemistry, maths group. Okay, yeah. And if you wanted to go to the engineering college, you need at least like a 135 marks, like a 300 out of 135 marks. Where is the 300 marks came from? That 300 marks actually came from physics, chemistry, and maths. 100. So these are 300. Okay, yeah. So if you wanted to go into the engineering college, you need at least 135 marks, but I get 111 marks, which is I am not a person that I would able to go to the engineering college. One thing. Another thing is that basically is this thing that I am not like at that time there is a kind of like a somebody new rule is actually came. The people who belong to the scheduled caste community can able to engineering college. They just really required 120 marks, but still I cannot kind of like a somebody cannot kind of like a fit into that particular group and things like that. So basically what exactly happened that I didn't really went to engineering college. So I try to imagine that one version of myself kind of like a went into the engineering college, the one version of myself kind of like a in this today's world and things like that. So have I ever kind of like a felt any kind of like a snippet or things like that, so that kind of like somebody I just connect with this thing and that and that? I think it's not. Okay, yeah. I don't know, this like a basically the frictionalized version of this particular concept is a kind of like a very much like a unrealistic. Okay, yeah. Because do I believe in this particular stuff? I think I'm not really sure about that, or maybe I think that na ki my brain is not a kind of like a somebody thing that ki I would understand this concept, because it's a way much kind of like a somebody crazy, way much kind of like a things that keep I don't know how to I supposed to explain this thing to her. It's just like parallel lives and things and that and that. I talk about this thing so many times, and it just felt like that. Now I'm just kind of like somebody repeating the answer again and again and again and again, because every time kind of a question kind of like a blend in that way and that way and that way. It just felt like very fucked up and things like that. Okay, yeah. So should I end here? Yeah, I have to end here. It's this question is not actually worth it to kind of like give any kind of like answer and things like that. Whatever. Okay. So this is it. I should have to end here, and thank you.